Section 22, Purchase Option Renewal Options. Early purchase option in addition with the option granted to the lessor pursuant to the Section 6.7 of the Participation Agreement, provided the lessor shall have the duly given notice required for the next succeeding sentence that have corresponding notice other than the lease shall currently purchase all or not but less than all other of the units that is subject to any other the lease. Lessor shall have been the right, and upon the giving in such notice that the obligation to the purchase, but not less than all the units leased here and under as specified in such a notice at the earlier purchase dates of such a unit as price equal to the equal purchase price of the units plus the other amount specified below. The lessor shall give the leaser written notice of not less than 90 days and not more than 180 prior days to early purchase units of the election of the exercise of the purchase option provided by the sections 22.1 with notice that it shall be irrevocable in payment of the early purchase price together with all unpaid basic rent therefore due and payable and incurred and prior to the early purchase date. X any make whole amounts of late payment interest of the respect of the equipment and notices of the prepaid and the Y accumulated equity deficiency amount with duplication of the amounts calculated above, any later payment interest related thereto, and any other supplemental rent due to the owing and by a lesser under the operative agreement, so that after the receipt application of all such payments without withdrawal from any reserve account owned or participation shall be entitled under the terms of collateral agency agreement to receive and do not receive, and taking the account of all payments and basic rent in respect of all payment of all units, the sum of accumulated equity, the deficiency amount, late payment, interest related thereto, and any other amounts due to the owner participation shall be made at the early purchase date as place of payment specified in Section 3.5 here and under the immediate available funds against deliverable of the bill of sale, transferring assigned to the lessor all rights, title, and interest of the leaser in such a unit as is or where is basis contained as the warranty as to the absence of the leaser's liens. The leaser shall not be required to make any representation warranty as the condition of such units. Any other matters may specify disclaim any such representation warranties. The cost of preparing the bill of sales, all documentation relating to any purchase of the lesser pursuant to this section 22.1, the cost of all necessary fillings relating to such a purchase will be borne by the lessor in the event of any such person recipient to the leaser of any of the amounts provided within Section 22.1 of the obligation of the lessor to pay the basic rent of the here and under such shall cease the lease, the term shall end. If the lessor elects to exercise the purchase option provided therefore this in Section 22.1, the lessor shall, as the purchase price thereof in the sole discretion of the lessor, either pay the early purchase price together with all the other amounts due and owing by the lessor under the operative agreements as are specified in paragraph above the one. To pay the difference between the amount specified in clause 1 and the outstanding principal's amount of the equipment notice of the early purchase date of the assume the full recourse base of all the owner trustee obligations under the indenture in respect to the indenture debtness and evidence of the equipment notice related to such a unit is provided in 3.6 of the indenture provided for that following such assumption of the purchase of units to remain subject to the lien separate of the indenture similar to the indentured pursuant, such as the indentured, and the lessor will make payments required of the foregoing clause, assuming the indebted evidence of the equipment notice is provided in foregoing with the early purchase date and the immediately available funds against delivery and the bill of sales, transferring, assigning to the lessor all the rights and title interest to the leaser and the units on as where is basis containing a warranty as to the absence of the leaser's liens, provided however that the lessor shall have the option to specify such a notice under Section 22.1 of the election to defer payment or the portion of early purchase price for such a unit in 4 installments in the amounts on the date set by the Schedule 6 of the participation agreement, so long as the portion of each purchase price payable by the lessor is early purchase date in the event of such election of the lessor under any circumstances in the event together with the other amounts of supplemental rent payment of the lessor on such a date will be the less sufficient and to pay in full in the date of the payment, therefore aggregate the unpaid principal accrued and interest in the equipment notes together with any make whole amount late payment interest and all other amounts owed to the holders of the equipment notes under the operative agreement that provided further that such deferred third proportion 1 may be prepared by the lessor to any time that the whole 2 will be secured in the favor of the leaser by a letter of credit by the bank or financial institution acceptable to the owner of the participation in the sole discretion of the acceptable owner participation in sole discretion of guarantee of Trli in the form of substantive reason for any reasonability satisfactory to the lessor, satisfactory to the leaser. The lessor shall fail to fulfill its obligation under the section paragraph of section 22(1). All of the lessor's obligation under the lease of the operative agreements conclude without limitation. The lessor's obligation to pay the installment of the rent shall continue, with the lessor shall be obligated to pay all the costs and expenses, including legal fees, expenses incurred by the leaser, owner, and participation in indenture trustee as a result of the notice given by the lessor or pursuant to this section. Listed on Schedule 6, this participation agreement, the basic rent adjustment of the early purchase price date of the date is the amount of the basic rent that is the early purchase date has been paid for the period for the early purchase date. They're based on the assumption that all prior to the amounts of the basic rent due have been paid. The amount of the basic rent that has an early purchase date is the amount of the basic rent and have it occurred that has not been paid for the periods prior to the early purchase date. If the lessor exercises the early purchase option, that the basic rent adjustment is negatively less or pays all other amounts due in the relation to such amount exercise, the lessor shall pay any amount of the equal to the early purchase price lesser to the absolute value of the amount of such basic adjustment listed in Schedule 6 of the participation agreement as a rebate of such basic rent, not as a reduction in early purchase price. And if lessor exercises early purchase option and the basic rent adjustment is positive, the lessor shall pay the amount of the equal to the early purchase price of the basic rent adjustment as the payment is accrued by the unpaid basic rent, not increasing the early purchase price. If the lessor elects to pay the early purchase price installments, the amount of the basic rent adjusted listed in Schedule 6 of the participation agreement shall be increased in degree or decrease as the cause may be, at the amount of the early purchase price payable to the lessor on the early purchase date. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the provisions of Section 22(1) of the contrary, lessor may pay for a cause of affiliate of the lessor to the purchase the beneficial interest of the lieu of the lessor purchasing the units of the pursuant to Section 22(1) of the purchase price equal to the beneficial interest of the purchase price may be keepable the lease and the equipment notices in place of the provided that the lessor shall remain liable under the lease to pay the basic rent and all other payments for and under the full provided further that they are such purposes that all shall be made in all respects in accordance with Section 6(9) of the participation agreement. Section 22, the election to retain the requiring end of the basic renewal term not less than 180 days, not more than 360 days prior to the end of the basic term or any renewal term. The leaser shall give the lessor primarily notice of the decision to return or retain of the units of the units subject to the other leases, being understood that at the end of the basic term or any renewal term of the lessor must return all and not less than all such units or units as such units that if it returns to retain, and not less than all of such units and units if it retains at the end of the basic term, such as a renewal term not less than 120 days prior to the end of the basic term or the end of any renewal term, the lessor shall give the lessor irrevocable written notice on the decision to return and the retaining of the units at the end of the basic term of such a renewal term. If the lessor elects to retain the units, the lessor shall comply with the Section 23, 24, and hereof thereas may be elected in accordance with the restriction that thereof includes the notice requirement stated therein, and the lessor fails to give the 120 days notice required of the Section 22(2), the subsequent notice required of the Section 22(3) and 22(4), the lessor shall deem it irrevocable elected to return to all of the units at the end of the basic term, applicable renewal term, as the case may be in accordance with Section 6. The Section 22(3), the purchase option, provided that the lessor shall have the duty of giving the notice required of the Section 22(2), and then that's for succeeding the sequence of the Section 22(3), in case of the purchase, the lessor shall have given the correspondence notice under the other leases shall be upon the purchase of the units herein under the concurrently purchase of the units there under the lease of the lessor shall have the right. And upon giving on such a notice under the Section 22(3), the obligation of the purchase of all units at a price equal to the fair market sales value of such a units at the expiration of the basic term, if a renewal term is, and in the effect of the end of such renewal term, plus all other amounts of due to the owing lesser under the operative agreements, including without limitation late payments, interest, unpaid rent. So therefore, after the receipt application of all such payments, with the withdrawal for any reserve account owner, the participation shall entitled with under the terms of the collateral agency agreement, the receipt does receive taking into account of all basic rent and payments in respect of the units to the sum of the accumulated equity deficiency amount and of the late payment of the interest related thereto and any other amounts then due to the owner participation. The lessor shall give the leaser the written notice not less than 90 days, no more than 360 days prior to the end of the basic term of any renewal term, in case may be an election to the exercise of the purchase option provided there for the in section 22(3), which notice it be irrevocable payments of the purchase price together with all other amounts due to the owing of the payment owing by the lessor under the operative agreement shall be made with the place of the payment the specified in the section of there 3.5 there here and under the immediately available the funds on against delivery of the bill of sale, transferring the assignments to the lessor of all rights, titles, and interests to the leaser in such an absence leaser in such that units as is, whereas spaces containing as a warranty as to the absence of the leaser's liens, the leasers shall be not required to make any other representation warranty to the condition of such a unit. Any other matters may specify disclaim any such representation warranties. Section 22(4) renewal option provided no event of the default shall have occurred by the continuing lessor shall have the duly given in the notice required of Section 22(2) the accordance notice under the other leases and shall upon renewal of the units here and under concurrently renewing of the units under the release and leases that have not exercised the option to purchase the units pursuant to Section 22(3) the lessor shall have the right to and upon given upon the notice under the Section 22(4) as below provided the obligation to lease the pursuant to the lease of all but not less than all the units as expiration of the basic terms of the applicable renewal lessor or may exercise this renewal option by giving the leaser written notice not less than 90 days more than 360 days prior to the end of the basic term or in the circumstances described below that the renewal of the term the lessor elects to renew the lease with respect to all not less than all the units in the lease here under the rental payment calculated by the reference of the fair market value rent or fair market rent value, the fair market renewal, or fixed rent, the fixed rate renewal. The leaser's options such as renewal may, in the case be fair market renewal, be for renewal term for 1 or more years in the case of the fixed rate renewal, for initial renewal terms of 3 years, but not more to the extent beyond the outside of the renewal date in the connection with any of the renewal for the following of the initial renewal terms in the term of 1 year more than expiring, not later than the outside of the renewal date in case such a lease which shall specifically in such notice without notice shall irrevocably the basic rent of each during any renewal term. The renewal rate is shall in the case of any fixed rate renewal 1/12 of the 1,000 of average annual basic allocated overall period for the end of the basic rent holiday. Therefore, the basic term expiration date payable monthly if arrears in the case of fair market rental value be 100% of the fair market value determined in the commencement of the applicable renewal term provided here. However, in the case of the first 2 years in the fair market renewal periods and immediately follow the basic term expiration date of whether under Section 22(4) and 6.1 be 105% of the fair market rental value determined in the commencement of the applicable renewal term and provided that however the preceding provision shall not apply to any in the event the lessor provides the leaser if the lessor's sole cost expense with any of the option of independent tax counsel selected by the leaser, which counsel shall be selected by the leaser from among foreign nationality recognized law firms proposed by the lessor, each as such which must be experienced in leveraged leasing a transaction similar to the transaction contemplated herein and the effect of the applicable Treasury regulations, other administrative pronouncements upon Taxpayers may rely on federal income tax purposes will permit rent and for the renewal term to rate equal to 100% of the fair market value rent determined as the time of such a renewal term without resulting in the adverse federal income tax consequent with the owner participation within the means of in the tax indemnity agreement under the code of section 467 and its successor provision thereto. Each renewal term shall commence immediately upon the expiration of the basic term of the preceding renewal term as the cause of the may be the lesser shall not and be entitled to enter any fixed rate renewal following the expiry of any of the fair market renewal. Section 22.5 Rent appraisal. Outside the rental date and the properly filing the leases revocable written notice pursuant to Section 22.2, the selection of the retaining of the units at the end of the basic term of any renewal term, any of the event they anticipated that there will be an extended units at the end of the basic term of such a renewal date, the leaser and the lesser shall be determined. A, if the lesser shall have been exercised of the fixed rate renewal and the remaining use of the life of the fair market sales value based on the actual condition of the responsible sampling of such a units. Any determinants pursuant to the appraisal procedures as set forth by the definition of the fair market sales value in the units in two latest dated such as that one of the period of the closing date is two such that the date would not exceed 80% of the useful life of any of the unit is determined by the subclause 1 above after the closing date. 2, the fair market sales value of each of the units determined without regard to inflation deflation from the closing date on such a date which not less than 20% of the equipment cost of such a unit, such a date is determined under the subclause 2, that shall thereafter the latest date to whether the lease be renewed pursuant to the fixed rate renewal under the section 2.4, the outside renewal date. If the lesser shall be here an exercise purchase option under section 23.1, any renewal option under section 22.4, the fair market sales value applicable units at the end of the unit and of the existing basic term of the renewal term as applicable in each case of the assuming that the units are leased in the lease in the condition required by the lease if the lesser shall have the exercise of fair market renewal or if they anticipated that there will be an extended units at the end of the basic terms and renewal term, the fair market rent value applicable units at the end of each of the existing basic tenant or renewal terms as applicable in each of the case as such units are at least to the condition required by the lease. 22.6 Stipulated loss amount determination amount during the renewal term. All provisions of the lease otherwise section 10 of the shall be applicable during any renewal term of such a unit except for the specified in the next sentence. During any renewal, stipulated loss amount of the determination amount of any of the units shall be determined on the basis of the fair market sales value of such a unit at the first date of such renewal term reduced to equal monthly increment of the fair market sales value of such a unit as the last date of such a renewal term, provided that there is no event during the fixed rate renewal such as stipulated loss amount of determination amount at any unit less than 20% of the equipment of the cost of each unit. 22.7 deemed renewals if the lease does not exercise its purpose as option in 22.3 as in renewal option under 72.4 the end of the basic terms of any renewal term of the lease of any subject to the sublease at the end of the basic term of such renewal term shall be deemed of a unit under this section. 22.7 including the rent shall otherwise be generally provided by section 22.4 in the respect of the fair market renewal for the period thereof can be considered a renewal term. 22.8 the funding and accounts of a purchase lease will not exercise the purchase of the unit under the section 22 unless a the full amount of the required of the fund is post the lease term of the reserve account and the amount of the consumption of such a purchase distribution of all amounts required to be distributed by the collateral agent or the collateral agency agreement will be then available collateral agent to fund such an account A as an indemnity pursuant to the section 313 of the collateral agency agreement has been provided to section 23 limitations of the leaser's liability.